Hello everybody. Please meet your coach. My name is Victor Anromo, Human Factors and Leadership Coach. With a background in strategic management, business education, and leadership development, I specialize in applying human factors principles to training environments that demand precision, resilience, and clear decision making. As a certified GLA 360 coach and university lecturer, I've worked with future leaders and operational teams across industries, bridging the gap between technical skills and human performance. This Human Factor Excellence course, I'll guide you through powerful concepts that elevate flight training from procedural to purposeful. Together, we'll explore how pilots and instructors can think more clearly, lead more effectively, and train for mastery, starting from day one. Let's start with a brief overview. Master Airline Pilot and Human Factor Excellence offers a process for improving pilot skills in risk management, situational awareness, building decision making, communications, and crew management. It links aviation human factors with practical airline operations to promote the development of master-level aviation skills across a full range of pilot experience. Serving as a practical guide for operational aviation challenges, this course discusses exceptional events such as operations under marginal condition, intervening to interdict an unsafe operation, and resolving crew conflicts. It also provides techniques for handling more common airline flying challenges like delays, holding, diverting, and continuing versus aborting a deteriorating game plan. This course is intended for airline pilots, training captains, simulator instructors, and aviation students taking courses in flight safety and crew management to improve their skill set, proficiency, and expertise towards peak performance. So, before we start, let's review our contents. We'll starting with a short introduction. Safe airline aviation is one of the most successful achievements of modern society. Proactive safety management systems, effective CRM programs, and proven training methods have combined to deliver a nearly perfect safety record. Despite our progress, some stubborn safety problems still linger, as you have seen the late years. We still commit avoidable errors. We still make questionable decisions. Bad events still happen. Our nearly perfect safety record is not good enough. When a mishap event occurs, we wonder why. We study the aviation environment and see how conditions rise and fall, appear and disappear, and mix and match to generate unpredictable situations. Positioned in the middle of this turbulent, uncertain environment is us and you, pilots, trying your best to fly your aircraft and achieve safe outcomes. When you don't handle aviation challenges skillfully, latent vulnerabilities surface, problems slip through. Surveying across your pilot group, you identify one subgroup that does very well almost all of the time. However, when particular conditions combine in unfavorable ways, this group encounters problems that they sometimes handle unskillfully. We identify another subgroup that consistently demonstrates superior levels of awareness, skill, and judgment to successfully handle every challenge they encounter. These master class pilots employ reliable mindset techniques and practices that generate their success. The purpose of this course is to identify these skills, train these skills and attributes, understand how they work, and guide a process of weaving them into your personal aviation wisdom. Let's talk about the author. Steve Sober is an aviation human factors consultant with Human Factors Excellence in Aviation, LLC. He holds a BA in Human Factors from the USAF Academy and an MA in National Security Studies from CSU San Bernardino. Over his 4-year pilot career, he flew over 80,000 hours in military and air carrier aircraft. His airline career spanned over 26 years, where he served over 20 years as a captain on a variety of Boeing 737 aircrafts. While flying for the airline, he served for 23 years in a variety of pilots, union safety committee roles, including safety committee chair, human factors subcommittee lead, GO team accident investigator, professional nihilism council lead, and safety investigator. During his tenure, he authored over 200 articles under his column, The Human Factor, which were published in union member publications. He has presented and led workshops at the International Symposium of Aviation Psychology and the PAC-TEFF Human Factors CRM Conference. He is an original member of the Human Factors Roundtable. He served as an active pilot monitoring working group, which published a practical guide for improving flight path monitoring through the Flight Safety Foundation. Additionally, he has served on several work groups tasked with researching and redesigning airline flight deck procedures and operating manuals. Building masterclass pilots. Whether we are new to the airline industry or approaching retirement, we share an extraordinary journey. It begins at the first moment when we choose to pursue a career in professional aviation. It concludes when we respond to the last item of the last checklist, our last flight. Every day marks another step along our masterclass journey. We have worked hard, studied and practiced to get where we are today. When we were students, every step followed a singular training path defined by the curriculum. When our formal training ends, available paths diverge. We have a choice with how we wish to proceed. One path leads towards settling into our comfort zone, relaxing and enjoying the ride. Another path, which we advocate, leads toward master class, human factors excellence growth, continuous learning, and enjoying the ride with more passion. With either path, we get to enjoy the ride because aviation is an awesome career. What a great life we have chosen for yourselves. Some may ask, what is wrong with relaxing into our comfort zone? Reaching it means that we have finally developed the skills to fly easily and confidently. It is a natural outcome after achieving proficiency. In truth, there is nothing inherently wrong with settling into our comfort zone. Vulnerabilities only arise because our personal awareness and learning begins to subside after settling into the famous comfort zone. In this relaxed state, we can erroneously conclude that we have reached the summit of the mountain and that there is nothing left to learn. The truth is that the path continues. There is no summit. There is always a new level of learning to explore. For perspective, consider the simple act of eating food. We eat every day. Each of us amasses enough experience to become comfortable with our current level of food knowledge. We know what we like, we know what we don't like, and we know how different food affects us and nourishes us. Yet, no matter how proficient we are with eating, we can advance our understanding of nutrition. Nutrition represents a deeper level of knowledge beyond the familiarity acquired by simply consuming food. If eating foods leads to dietary proficiency, understanding nutrition leads to dietary mastery. With this example, a step further, imagine that we make a commitment to learn more about nutrition. We might start by reading an informative book, or surfing relevant websites, attending courses. We might discover that our current diet, however enjoyable and tasty, is actually endangering our health. We might even discover that we aren't even chewing our food sufficiently. By delving into nutrition, we discover that we have unknowingly fostered latent health vulnerabilities that may surface later in life. Until we made a commitment to study the science of nutrition, we can move beyond the barrier created by just eating proficiently. What's more, knowledge of nutrition alone is not enough. There are expert nutritionists who still choose to eat poorly. It is only by balancing science, knowledge of nutrition, our awareness, psychology, our energy, our intention, which is committed practice, that we can achieve the mastery with our diets and adding exercise. The same logic follows for aviation. As we amass flying experience, we become proficient and comfortable, settling for only proficiency and comfort. We reach a barrier that limits our progress toward mastery. It keeps us vulnerable to committing errors and making questionable decisions. To overcome this barrier, we each need to pursue the masterclass human factors excellence path. Just as nutrition reveals a deeper level of food knowledge, aviation human factors uncovers a deeper level of aviation wisdom. Aviation human factors, HF. Many of us have a sense of what HF entails, but not be able to clearly define it. One reason for this is that the breadth of HF is so extensive. It spans across how we interact with our aircraft, automation, each other procedures, operational systems, and our own psychology and awareness. Some specific areas include human-machine interface, which is the field of ergonomics, covers the physical design of everything we can see, touch, reach, or move on a flight deck, from the shape of and movement of switches and dials, to the size and presentation of screens, displays, to the judgment of our flight deck seat. Ergonomics engineering plays a guiding role. Automation. Automation encompasses how we interact with aircraft systems, computers, and displays. CRM interacts with each other, delves into time psychology, leadership, communications, shared mental models, and interacting with outside work groups and agencies. Procedures. Procedures cover the range of flight deck tasks, checklist, planning, and workload. These include execution, sequence, and interdependence between hundreds of individual aviation tasks. Aviation environment. HF studies how we interact with the many systems that surround us, including airline management, flight operations, dispatch, local station operations, passenger cabin operations, aircraft maintenance, air traffic control, and the local system created by pilots working together on a flight deck. Psychology. The center of all of these interactions is the human mind and awareness. Psychology illuminates the subconscious processes, biases, and limitations that affect how we interact with our aviation environment. For experienced airline pilots, even the greatest athletes have coaches, not because they are performing at the top of their game, because they believe that their pursuit of mastery benefits from an outside perspective. Coaches help them to both improve the strengths and eliminate the weakness in their performance. They detect nuances that the athletes don't perceive themselves. They identify subtle habits that open vulnerabilities and guide techniques to avoid errors and improve success. As line flying pilots, you don't have coaches flying with us and you every day. The next best options are coaching each other and becoming your own coach. Using the ideas in this course, we will discover ways to strengthen our performance and eliminate our weaknesses. This is where I enter as your coach. At this point in your careers, most of you have become skilled airline pilots or are students. We successfully handle every operational challenge that you encounter. Still, every once in a while, proficient, capable pilots like you find yourselves in difficult and different situations that you are ill-equipped to handle. It is along this turbulent edge of complexity, unpredictability, uncertainty, and risk that we sometimes fail. This course will reveal concepts, skills, and techniques that you can use to become better risk managers, decision makers, error mitigators, team leaders. Along the way, you will develop the foresight, resilience, and aviation mastery to navigate along this turbulent edge. For pilots pursuing an airline career, as aspiring airline pilots, you are still developing the skills that will serve you for the rest of your careers. You will make mistakes and learn lessons. There is an old adage in aviation that the best way to avoid making mistakes is to gain experience, and the best way to gain experience is by making mistakes. Rather than learning the hard way, you will study mishaps, incidents, and accidents to recreate the perspectives of the involved pilots. By examining your events, you will discover ways to avoid falling into similar traps. You will use their experiences to build your own experience. Many of the concepts and techniques may seem unusable for you at this early stage of your career. Some ideas will be immediately useful for you, and others will become useful later. Along the way, you will shape your perspective to maximize your personal growth of aviation wisdom and mastery. You will plant the seeds today and enjoy the harvest tomorrow. Perspective and presentation of this course. The concepts and techniques presented in this course should prove useful for all pilots, especially those operating in crew environments. It uses a perspective of passenger-carrying airlines because this environment fully encompasses the range of complications created by passenger service, crew interaction, and system complexity. Other aviation professionals, including military, corporate pilots, encounter different challenges, but in the end, we are all pilots flying aircraft together within the same aviation environment. The lessons and techniques presented on this course still apply. I refer to the left seat pilot as Captain CA. The position is sometimes referred as pilot, first pilot, or aircraft commander. For the right seat pilot, I use first officer FO. This position is sometimes referred as co-pilot or second pilot. For continuity, assume that the left pilot, captain, is serving as aircraft commander, and the right seat pilot, FO, is assuming the second in command role. So what follows? These early chapters of this course and models will lay the framework for our understanding of commonly used HF terms. The later sections will apply the HF perspective across many line flying situations to evaluate techniques toward becoming a wise masterclass pilot. Thanks for you, and thanks for your career, and also thanks for joining me on this journey throughout this wonderful course. After each module, I will be presenting some activities that you can develop in order for you to reflect, analyze, research, comment with other peers, and develop. 1. A master class of pilots. When we begin our aviation career, we are satisfied with learning our basic flight maneuvers and completing them without instructor intervention. Since our initial aviation journey is controlled by the training syllabus, we focus on learning. As we acquire experience and hours, we transition from learning to doing. Sure, we still need to learn about new aircraft procedures and operations, but the scales, measuring our priorities, and mental focus tip decidedly toward doing the job. As we settle into the daily routine of line flying, we level off, slide our seat back, and let the autopilot take over. The urgency to learn fades away. If some new procedure arises, we shift our mental focus long enough to learn it and then return to our comfortable routine. The consequence of doing is that it unintentionally creates a barrier to further learning. As master class pilots, human factor excellence, we choose to maintain our focus on learning, even after we reach proficiency. To understand our learning process, let's examine how our mindset changes as we gain some experience. So, how we learn. Let's begin with how we learn to perform a psychomotor tasks. Any task that involves thinking and physical movement. A simplistic view of flying is that we perceive a series of indications from a variety of sources, from an understanding of what they mean, decide what action needs to be taken, and perform that action to a flight control or aircraft system. We guide the aircraft along a desired path by continuously repeating this process. This sounds simple enough, but in practice it can become complicated by the volume of information and our ability to perceive and process it. It is further complicated by our decision-making process, training, repetition, environmental factors, quality of feedback, personal capabilities, and so much more. Consider the following process for completing a task. Perceive sensory inputs from our environment. Sort through these inputs and match them to recognize patterns. Apply meaning to the patterns. Choose a game plan that will move us from our present position toward our goal. Select decisions and actions that enact the game plan. Apply appropriate control inputs to the aircraft. Assess the effectiveness of our actions on the aircraft trajectory. Repeat the process for each follow-on adjustment. The stream of thinking and flying happens so quickly that it appears to flow seamlessly from one aviation task to the next. It is much like a motion picture, where each individual frame is followed by the next so quickly that it creates the experience of smooth motion. The mental effort and attention focus that we use to fly changes as we gain experience. To understand this better, consider pilots divided between three categories: novice, proficient, and master class, as the one you will become. Each category engenders a unique set of abilities, motivations, perspectives, and behaviors. How novice pilots learn. Let's skip ahead along our career path to a point where we begin training with our first airline. As a newly hired FO, everything is new and different. Whether our journey was through the traditional flight deck track or through the military track, reaching our first airline job feels a bit like starting over from zero. Even a fully certified pilot starting with a new aircraft or in a new organization imposes a unique set of policies, procedures, expectations. Everything feels unfamiliar. At first we experience information overload. We don't know how to skillfully rank, order everything what is happening. It feels like there are too many demands on our time and attention. We struggle to filter and prioritize. Every piece of information needs to be detected, considered, and judged for relevance. Then we need to choose whether to act on it, defer it, or ignore it. As we struggle to process everything, we find ourselves falling further and further behind the pace of the operation. This adversely affects our flying. We over-control or under-control the aircraft. All the while new inputs arrive that demand our attention. More time is lost and we fall further behind. To control the float, we start narrowing our focus. This promotes tunnel vision. We make a lot of mistakes. As frustrating as these early days may seem, each repetition gives us valuable experience and practice. We rapidly improve. This early learning phase requires a great deal of mental effort. The good news is that this isn't our first flying experience. We apply skills and techniques that we learned with our previous aircraft to handle these new challenges. We have successfully accomplished novice learning many times in our past. We will succeed again. The novice phase is fast-paced, but our learning curve is steep. How proficient pilots learn. Over time, we continue to gain experience and knowledge through repetition and practice. We learn the tricks of the trade. What once was rough and challenging becomes smooth and easy. We fly the aircraft effortlessly. The same stream of sensory inputs that completely overwhelm us as novices now seems easy to process. As proficient pilots, we have seen it all and done it all. We learn to combine inputs and tasks. Instead of perceiving and evaluating each sensory input, we recognize large blocks of information by how they match with familiar patterns. For example, consider a pilot cleared for a visual approach from the downwind while following another aircraft that is currently on base. The major decisions are managing energy, timing, configuration changes, thrust, and speed to arrive stabilized on final, ensuring spacing or maintaining an acceptable distance behind the preceding aircraft, and judging the turn to final, smoothly transitioning from a level downwind through a descending turn to roll out on the stabilized final approach segment. Within each of these subtasks are dozens of embedded decisions requiring our skillful judgment. We need to factor considerations like aircraft weight, speed, altitude, the preceding aircraft type, typical approach characteristics, weather parameters, runway layout, and many more, as you know. Novices see each of these as separate tasks to manage. Proficient pilots see the situation as one continuous flow, with each portion connected to the next. Another characteristic of proficient pilots is subconscious pattern recognition and decision making. If we ask a proficient pilot how they fly the base to final turn, we may get a vague answer like, I know where the aircraft needs to be, and I just fly it there. We know what looks right and fly the aircraft to reproduce that mental picture. Using this visualization technique, we not only interpret parameters accurately and quickly, but we anticipate future trends to stay ahead of changing conditions. This frees time and attention to monitor indications that are more subtle. This is why proficient pilots notice so much more than novices. While novices struggle to expand their situational awareness beyond the immediate confines of the flight deck, proficient pilots easily extend their situational awareness to anticipate future conditions. With repetition, we discover our comfort zone. We become more relaxed and confident. Proficiency is the level reached by the vast majority of us, good, capable, successful, and skillful pilots. As our comfort zone deepens, we form habits and routines to make each phase of the flight familiar and easy. Over time, these routines become automatic. We reach a point where we can do them without consciously thinking about them. Like our aircraft, we can complete many aviation tasks while our brains run on autopilot. Proficiency Proficiency pilots who are settled in their comfort zones develop an expectation of normalcy, that this event will go just like it did the last 10, 100 or 1,000 times. While our pace of learning in the novice phase is fast, learning in the proficient phase slows. To be clear, the proficient level does not necessarily reflect capability or skill. Some proficient pilots are considered to be the finest pilots within their organizations. Other proficient pilots are content with mediocrity. Instead, their proficient level is characterized by the mental stasis we experience as we settle into our comfort zones. The key distinction is that proficient pilots reach their comfort zone and are content to remain there. But how master class pilots learn? Master class pilots commit themselves to move beyond the comfort zone accepted by proficient pilots. Pursuing mastery, we strive to deepen our knowledge and understanding, both of our aviation profession and ourselves. This requires sustained effort. Instead of settling into a comfort zone of automatic, subconscious, habitual routine, we actively pursue high levels of understanding, awareness, and skill refinement. This requires commitments to practice mindfulness, pursue knowledge, and contemplate ourselves. Not content to simply complete each task successfully, we strive to understand the many conditions, indications, interactions, and underlying processes that influence and affect our task. Even when we fly well, we ask ourselves questions. Why did this work out so well this time? What were the subtle indications that I needed to incorporate into my monitoring routines? How can I improve my personal techniques to do these tasks better in the future? While proficient pilots are content to settle for successful performance, master class pilots strive to steadily raise their flying to higher levels of precision. Why go through the extra effort to pursue the master class level? The human factors excellence, you may ask? These are the main benefits. Master class pilots are better prepared to handle complex and non-standard situations. We are better prepared to handle unexpected situations. Master class pilots make better instructors and mentors. Like the wise elders of the tribe, we collect techniques to pass along the others. Master class pilots find self-satisfaction through the pursuit of mastery by approaching each task as a learning experience. Every flight remains fresh and interesting. But how we learn to manage aviation tasks? Let's examine some aspects of learning to be better understanding the transition between the novice, the proficient, and the master class levels. Heuristic development, learning the tricks of the trade. A useful way to understand the learning process is by how we each develop our personal heuristics. Heuristics are the mental techniques that we use for detecting inputs, interpreting them, and applying procedures to successfully complete tasks. Simply stated, heuristics are habits and techniques we use to complete aviation tasks. Our personal heuristics may not be the best methods or even the procedures we are supposed to use, but they work for us. On the information processing side, they help us sift through the flood of sensory inputs. They help us combine indications and organize groupings into patterns that make sense. They also guide where to focus our attention. We learn which parameters warrant our attention and which can be ignored. The process of heuristic development evolves and changes as we gain experience and knowledge. Novice pilot heuristics. In the classroom, we are taught how to complete a common aviation task, like an engine start using a standardized process. The instructor ensures that we can repeat the steps of the task sequentially, consistently, and accurately. We adopt a heuristic that views the engine start as ordered steps of equal importance. For example, 1. Check for system preconditions, lead air pressure. 2. Rotate that engine start switch to the start position. 3. Look at the duct pressure gauge for the pressure drop, and so on. As we perform, engine starts over and over again. Our engine start heuristic begins to change. The order sequence blends into our continuous flow, where each step naturally and logically leads to the next. The lines between each steps become blurred. We begin to clump certain steps together into a series of mini-flows, where each step triggers or creates a precondition for the next. Look at that, do this, wait for that, move on the next step, and so on. We also develop a sense of the pacing of how long each task typically takes, and whether the task is a quantitative, does the light turn on or not, or qualitative, does the engine core temperature rise at normal rate or not. Returning to our engine start example, our heuristic becomes a much more detailed and blended flow. 1. Start by checking the pressurization panel to ensure that we have adequate start pressure. Typically, we develop a mini-flow to ensure proper system configuration. APU bleed air on, air conditioner backs off, the pressure adequate for engine start. That mini-flow becomes a precondition to 2. Engage the engine starter motor. We turn a switch or depress a button and determine whether it engaged successfully. A yes/no quantitative determination. This leads to 3. Verify that the start valve has opened by observing a change in the bleed air duct passage pressure gauge. Yes/no quantitative determination. We check to see that the engine is beginning to spin by looking at the appropriate gauge, also a quantitative determination. This cues us to 4. Switch from quantitative assessments to several qualitative assessments, like checking the rate of engine acceleration and the appropriate rise of oil pressure. Each parameter is evaluated against what we have come to accept as normal. Does this parameter react like it normally does or not? Following this, we 5. Check that the engine reaches the appropriate speed, then we engage fuel flow. This in turn cues us to 6. Monitor engine light off and the rise in turbine speed and core temperature, both qualitative, while monitoring for start failure lights, quantitative, and so on. Until we establish our proficient heuristic, we tend to over-process information. We expend a great deal of effort and time detecting, deciding, understanding, and acting at the novice level. We frequently become task overloaded, like driving on narrow roads in an unfamiliar country. We struggle to stay in our lane, keep up with the flow of traffic, interpret the signs, and find our way. We miss important cues while trying to filter through many unimportant ones. Additionally, we lack skill while processing abnormalities. When something happens out of the ordinary, we are slow to process the new conditions and take appropriate actions. Proficient pilot heuristics. Over time, we acquire rules of thumb, simplifications, or tricks of the trade that help us to easily complete the engine start. We learn to devote more attention to relevant indications and less attention to unimportant ones. We also mentally combine information into useful groupings or baskets. Numbers gain contextual meaning. The raise on the fuel flow gauge indicates that the fuel flow valve has opened, but the value on the gauge allows us to assess whether it is appropriate for normal start, whether it is a typical initial fuel flow value, or an early indication of an impending problem, like an initial fuel flow that is abnormally high. A non-typical indication might signal a condition that may lead to a hung start, slow start, or an engine over temperature. Our understanding of these nuances grows with repetition and experience. Proficient pilot heuristics evolve from the novice list of steps into interdependent flows, blending one task to the next. The more individual steps we combine, the more we can handle in addition to virtual indications. We begin to notice sounds and vibrations that the novice pilot wouldn't. We also refine our sense of pacing. This subtask should take this long to complete. The next one should take slightly longer. When the pacing of an event doesn't match what we expect, we investigate the cause. Each successful repetition reinforces our routine and makes it more familiar, solid, and easy. Masterclass pilots' heuristics. As proficient pilots solidify their habit patterns, their levels of attention and effort decrease. As masterclass pilots, however, we don't let familiarity influence our attention or effort. Like proficient pilots, we expect tasks to go normally, but we remain diligent for exceptions. Each engine start is not just another engine start. Each remains important because we might experience that one hung start of our entire career. We don't expect something to go wrong, but we elevate our vigilance in case something goes wrong. This improves our anticipation. We become experts on the many ways, however rare, that an otherwise normal event can go wrong. For comparison, if you ask a proficient pilot to list the ways that an engine start can go awry, they might give you a basic list: start switch failure, starter shaft failure, no light off, hung start, engine fire, and over temperature. A masterclass pilot like yourself could present a much longer list, with many subtle cases, that might list all of the standard starting abnormalities, plus first start of the day in very cold weather, middle of the day start in very hot conditions, high altitude engine start, external start, car failure during engine start, strong tailwind, APU failure during start, an interrupted start, etc. Additionally, master class pilots could cite specific examples that they had experienced, read about, and heard about. Master class pilot heuristics are richer and deeper as we continue to add more nuance and detail, like the proficient cinema director or the proficient and detailed artist. Viewed as woven cloth, the novice understanding is like a simple crosswave. The proficient pilot's understanding is like a sturdy canvas, and the masterclass pilot's understanding is like an ornate tapestry, interwoven with many different colors and types of threads, each one representing a different experience and piece of knowledge integrated within the whole. That is what we are expecting from you as this master class of pilot via human factor excellence.